Okay, so welcome to our third video. And here we're going to start talking about the interpretive paradigm. Again, we're talking about paradigms, ways of seeing the world. How do we know what we know? How do we know what's true and what's not true and that kind of thing? We talked already about the positivist. Now let's talk about the interpretivist. Now the interpretivist tradition was really rooted in German thought. Okay, Max Weber promoted an idea that he termed or called Verstehen. Okay, and what that means is that it's really German for to understand. All right, and so what Max Weber and many of the philosophers and researchers around that time were starting to do is to start to say, look, yes, you can gather information about the world out there, but we want to understand the subjective experience of people. Okay, so if we're talking about brakes in a car, all right, we can test those and test them and test them and refine that down until we find what's the best brake for vehicles. Okay, but what Max Weber and again a lot of the people in that interpretivist school were realizing is that people experience the world differently. Okay, there is and we can't dictate that to them. Okay, we can't dictate that experience to them. So because there are different viewpoints on this socially constructed thing that we call school and education, okay, the claims about what is absolutely true and going to be true and work for everybody are somewhat diminished because we realize that everyone's experience is different. Now, as I talked about earlier, full disclosure, I would be more of an educational researcher in the interpretivist paradigm. Okay, I understand that there's values in numbers and statistics and those kind of testing things and verifying things. I understand all that, but we're not there yet. We're talking more about the overall paradigm. So when I set out to do research, my general bias is going to be that yes, we might be able to test theories and find things out, but that's really only going to be valid for the people in my research group. So the only way that we could know for sure about things is that we'd have to test everybody. All right, and so that would be if we go back to that scientific method, it's like, well, we need to test every single person so that we can distinguish, for whom and what groups does this work and not work. And in the interpretive paradigm, we're looking more to describe the experience and start to understand the experience, understand the nuances that go with things. So let's go back to some of our examples. When we're talking about curriculum, or we're talking about a behavioral management program, um, we could test them up and down, but until we apply them and use them on our own students, we're not going to know if they really work or not. We're not going to understand the experience. Okay, so in the area of classroom management, for instance, when I first started teaching, I spoke with a veteran teacher that I respected and knew, and I said, so what's your behavior management program that you use? And they looked at me and said, I don't know, I haven't met my students yet. I have some general things that I do know work and things that tend to not work, but until I meet my students, I'm not going to know what's going to resonate with them, what's going to motivate them. And that really helped me understand early on in the area of classroom management to be careful not to have rigid adherence to things that I have established as fact in the past and then try and force that upon a new group of students. Okay, so the paradigm of interpretive research seeks to understand the world around the researcher, seeks to understand the experience, the subjective experience. Okay, so when we're dealing with people, at least in my opinion, that the interpretivist approach is much better. Now, there are lots of people who will disagree with me, and you're going to get you're going to get bombarded, as I said earlier, you're going to get bombarded with more from the positivists. This works, guaranteed. This is going to work, and you need to be careful about that. Okay, when you need to be careful about that as a teacher, and I want to elevate your understanding so that you can start to read where are they getting these things and what are the assumptions behind these claims that people are making, they're handing you and saying, this is a new plan that we're going to do, or this is a plan that you should do. It's proven to work. Time out. Proven how? Proven with what background, what approach to knowing and understanding the world around us. So that's quick and dirty with the interpretivist. The critical, I'll just tag this on the end. The critical theorists, they really seek to break things down and challenge established ways of thinking. They see their research as, how do we undermine kind of the establishment, okay? And so that's when you start to get into even further past the interpretive spectrum, and you start to get into questioning authority and questioning establishment. And we're not going to get into that. That's not something that we are going to have a lot of time to get into. So as I said earlier, we have the interpretivist, and we have the positivist paradigms. And really those are two key ones that you need to understand. Okay, now that we've understood that, now in our next video, we're going to dig a little deeper and start to get into the methodology. Okay, and so then we'll sum this whole thing up by trying to put it all into perspective and tie it back into our course.